If someone asked me, "Do you think family is where love begins?" I'd probably smirk, sip my coffee, and say, "Not in my case." I'm Jennifer, 36 years old, and I was born in a beige little house tucked between cul-de-sacs in the suburbs of Santa Rosa, California. White shutters, two-car garage, and a swing set out back that was rusting before I even learned to swing. From the outside, picture perfect. But inside that house, I was the accidental daughter, the one who didn't fit. My sister Clarissa. Oh, she was everything. 9 years older, she came first and came flawless. Gifted, graceful, loud in all the right ways. When I was born, my mom used to joke to neighbors, we were already complete with Clarissa. This one just snuck in laughs all around. Everyone chuckled. Everyone but me. Because even at 5, I understood what it meant to be extra. An afterthought. Mom was a fifth-grade teacher. Dad was a traffic systems engineer. Translation exhausted 24/7. And me, the daughter they didn't plan for, didn't quite know what to do with. When I was little, I used to think if I just stayed quiet enough, they might notice me. Instead, they handed me off. Every morning, like clockwork, my dad would jingle the car keys and mutter to my granddad, "You wanted her? She's yours till 6. Then he'd be gone. The door clicking shut like punctuation at the end of a sentence I wasn't part of. But my grandparents, oh, they were my refuge. Their little home 10 minutes away felt like another planet. Warm smells of cardamom bread, my grandpa's endless stories about how numbers told the truth, and the way my grandma said my name like it was a song. "Jenny, sweetheart, let's sit and do your spelling." In that house, I mattered. I wasn't someone's mistake. I was their hope. At home, it was like I was just there. No one said anything cruel. But silence has a sharp edge, it cuts deeper than words. Clarissa got everything. Every birthday came with a backyard blowout, fairy lights, 3-tiered cake, and even a DJ once. My birthday. One time I had a candle stuck into a grocery store cupcake. No card, no question, no, "What did you wish for, Jenny?" Clarissa never bullied me. She didn't need to. Her world was so far above mine, I barely existed in her atmosphere. I remember sitting on the floor once trying to show her my drawing of a rocket ship. She glanced, said cool, and went back to FaceTiming her friends. I got the message. My parents. They couldn't stop talking about Clarissa. Riss got a scholarship. She's the editor of the school paper now. Me, I once won second place in the science fair. No one noticed, no one asked. I used to think maybe when Clarissa leaves for college, they'll finally see me. They didn't. They just noticed the dishes piling up. When she left for NYU, I was 14. I watched her get into the taxi, Mom crying like Clarissa had enlisted in the military, Dad beaming with pride. I was standing in the kitchen holding a dish rag. They didn't even say goodbye to me. That same night, as I climbed the stairs to do homework, Mom called out Jennifer dishes and wiped down the counters. I'm exhausted. That was the moment it clicked. I wasn't going to be seen, not now, not ever. I wasn't a daughter. I was a second pair of hands. After school, every day I'd walk into that house and head straight to the fridge, not for food, but for the sticky note. Chore list. Always chores first. Homework second if there was time. Vacuum the hallway, mop the stairs, prep dinner. "You live here, don't you?" Mom would say if I ever complained. "You're not a guest." Once I asked if I could skip vacuuming to study for finals. Her answer: "So an A matters more than helping your family." That night I studied after midnight. Quietly. Alone. Light dim. Hands tired. I started to realize something: no matter what I did, it would never be enough. While my friends were going to the skating rink or sleeping over at each other's houses, I was scrubbing tile grout. My dad once laughed and said, "You clean better than any maid." That was supposed to be a compliment, I think. It wasn't just the chores. It was the constant comparison. The way Mom would say Riss was never this lazy, or she knew how to balance school and family. And I'd just nod. Smile, take it. But I wasn't numb. I was storing it, quietly, like a storm building at sea. What saved me? 2 things. My grandparents and spite. Grandma once told me, "Jenny, love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just being there." And they were there. Every Sunday call, every holiday cookie tin, every handwritten card with my name on it in purple ink. One day I opened a letter that read, "You're not invisible to us. Keep shining." So I did. I started applying to colleges without telling my parents. Late at night, I'd sit on the edge of my bed with my laptop glowing in the dark, researching scholarships and majors and dorm rules. I didn't want to just leave. I wanted to build something, for me. Senior year, I got into 3 universities. One acceptance letter even said full ride. I laid the envelopes on the table, heart pounding. Mom looked at them, blinked, and went back to peeling potatoes. Dad didn't even look up from the TV. "I'll need help with tuition," I said quietly. Mom exhaled. "We can't help, Jenny." "But didn't you set aside anything?" "We used that for Clarissa's wedding," she said. "It was a destination event, Jenny. 5-course dinner, flowers, band." "You were there." "Yeah, I was there, wearing flats, handing out place cards while my sister floated through the vineyard like a Pinterest dream." I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just called my grandparents. And they, God, I love them. They didn't even hesitate. "We've been saving for you since the day you were born," Grandpa said. "We knew you'd need wings. And now you do." A week later, I moved out. My parents barely blinked. Mom just said, "Do what you think is best." And I did. I left that house like a whisper, but I swore one day they'd hear my name and feel it. That's how I ended up at Ridgewell University, studying economics, sitting in cold classrooms with kids who'd never scrubbed a floor in their life. And yet, I was the one who stayed late, asked questions, and crushed every assignment. Because I wasn't just trying to succeed. I was trying to prove I mattered. At Ridgewell, I became someone else. Not overnight, but piece by piece. The girl who used to eat lunch in the laundry room to avoid Clarissa's friends became the woman people turned to during finance presentations. My professors started calling me focused, but it wasn't just focus, it was survival. Every time I opened a textbook, it was me rewriting the narrative. I wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. I was the first person in my family to earn a full academic scholarship. And while my parents didn't care, my grandparents did. They called every Sunday, asked about my classes, my friends, even my laundry. Grandpa used to say, "Education's your sword, Jenny. Use it to carve the life you deserve." So I did. Sophomore year, I landed an internship at a local wealth management firm. The first time I walked into that office wearing a blazer that didn't quite fit and shoes I bought secondhand, I felt like a fraud. But by the end of the week, I was reviewing portfolios and offering insights that made the senior analysts raise their eyebrows. One of them, Marcus, took me aside and said, "You've got instincts. Don't waste them." I held on to that. By the time I graduated, I had 2 job offers. One in Chicago, one in Manhattan. I chose New York because it scared me. And because I needed to prove that no matter where I came from, I could stand where the skyline cuts the sky. I moved into a tiny studio apartment in Harlem, cramped, noisy, and mine. I worked 14-hour days at a private investment firm downtown, studying market patterns until my eyes blurred. I didn't complain, not once. Because for the first time, every ounce of effort was building something that couldn't be erased or handed to someone else. In my second year at the firm, I was promoted. Not because I asked, not because I networked at happy hours, but because I quietly became indispensable. When deals started slipping, they came to me. When numbers didn't add up, I caught it. I didn't need to be loud. I just needed to be undeniable. My life wasn't glamorous, but it was real, honest. And for the first time, I felt like I belonged to myself. I barely spoke to my family during those years. Clarissa never called. Mom would sometimes text on holidays, short things like, "Hope you're well" or "Merry Christmas," but they felt like polite obligations more than anything else. I never asked for anything, never updated them on promotions or milestones. I figured if they weren't proud when I was scrubbing floors and acing finals, they didn't deserve the highlight reel now. The only people who knew the full story were my grandparents. Every success I had, I shared with them. Every late-night anxiety spiral, every new milestone. They listened. They reminded me of who I was. They were the reason I kept going. But life doesn't wait for you to feel ready. One Monday morning, I was reviewing Q3 analytics when my phone buzzed. It was a Sacramento number I didn't recognize. I ignored it. It buzzed again. Voicemail. Then a text. "This is Dr. Patel from St. Francis Hospital. Please call regarding your grandfather." I froze. The air in my chest vanished. I stepped out of the meeting, hands shaking, heart pounding, and returned the call. His voice was steady. "Jennifer, I'm sorry to tell you, your grandfather passed away early this morning. Heart failure. It was sudden. I didn't speak. I couldn't. The city noise around me became white noise, distant and meaningless. I booked the next flight west without telling anyone at work. I just left. When I arrived at the hospital, the bed was already empty. My grandmother sat in the chair beside it, her hand still clutched around the edge of his blanket. She looked smaller than I remembered, frail, like someone had removed her anchor. Her eyes met mine and she whispered, "He kept asking for you." I stayed with her that night in the old house, the house that smelled like vanilla safety and everything that was ever good in my childhood. I made tea. She didn't drink it. We sat in silence, memories pressing down on every wall. A week later, after the funeral, she handed me a sealed envelope. "He wrote this a month ago," she said. I opened it after she fell asleep. It wasn't long, just a note in his scratchy writing. "Whatever happens, remember who believed in you first. This house, if you want it, it's yours." 3 weeks later, she passed in her sleep. The doctor said her heart gave out, but I knew the truth. Some people aren't meant to live without the ones they love. She had followed him just like she always said she would. I returned to the house alone to handle the estate. The kitchen table still had her recipe cards. Their books were still on the shelves. I was the one signing documents, settling affairs, and finalizing the will. I never expected what came next. Their lawyer, a kind man named Mr. Devlin, met me in his office. Your grandparents left you everything," he said gently. "The house, the savings, all of it. They made it clear. You were their legacy." I didn't know what to feel. It wasn't about the money. It was the final affirmation that I mattered, that someone in this family had seen me for who I was. Not a helper, not a ghost, but Jennifer, their granddaughter. Loved, trusted, chosen. I didn't tell my parents right away. I needed time to process it. But eventually I called them. We met at a coffee shop halfway between my apartment and theirs. I told them everything, that I was selling the house, that I wanted to use the money to buy them something better than the rundown duplex they were living in. A one-story home with a small yard. Quiet, comfortable, a chance to age in peace. They stared at me like I'd grown another head. My dad blinked slowly. My mom's eyes actually welled up. "You'd do that?" she asked. I shrugged. "I already did." I showed them listings I'd been reviewing. All within budget, all in good neighborhoods, all clean slates. For a moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, this would be the turning point. That we could rewrite everything that had gone wrong. I wasn't asking for a parade. Just acknowledgement, gratitude, maybe even a hug. Instead, I got logistical questions. How big is the garage? Does it come with appliances? I swallowed my disappointment. Some people just don't change. 2 weeks later, we closed on a cozy home in Pleasant Hill. Pale yellow siding, fenced yard, lots of sunlight. It wasn't a mansion, but it was solid. I handed them the keys myself. My mom took them like she expected them all along. My dad said thanks and walked inside without looking back. But I didn't mind. I told myself I didn't need validation anymore. Except maybe I did, because the next part still stings when I think about it. 3 weeks passed, no updates, no invitation, no mention of the housewarming party they were supposedly planning. Every time I called, they gave vague answers. Still organizing. Not ready yet. Then one night, scrolling through Facebook, I saw it. Clarissa had posted, "Can't wait for this weekend housewarming party at the new place. So excited to show everyone where we've landed." I stopped breathing. My name wasn't mentioned. Not once. But the photos said everything. Streamers, floral arrangements, catering, vans. And in the background, boxes labeled Clarissa. Her kids playing in the backyard. Her husband on the porch. The same porch I had bought for my parents. I wasn't just left out. I was erased. I didn't sleep that night. I kept staring at my phone, refreshing Clarissa's page like the next post might somehow make it better. Like maybe someone would tag me with a thank you or a mention or even a photo that proved I had been invited. But there was nothing. Just more updates from people I hadn't heard from in years, excited to attend a party in a house they didn't know I had paid for. I wasn't angry at first. I was confused. Like I'd walked into a movie halfway through and missed the part where the plot flipped. Had I misunderstood something? Had they planned to include me and just forgotten to hit send? But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. I recognized the signs. This wasn't new. It was just a bigger version of a story. I'd lived all my life, me doing the work, them reaping the reward, and Clarissa always somehow landing in the spotlight like the sun never stopped shining for her. Only this time it wasn't about birthdays or report cards or who got the best bedroom. This was a house. This was legacy. This was the home my grandparents had built with love and left to me. I had taken that gift and used it to help the same people who never looked back at me, rewritten the ending without even giving me a line. So I flew back to California without telling anyone. I landed, rented a car, and drove straight to Pleasant Hill. The closer I got, the heavier my chest felt. And when I turned the corner onto their new street, the sight of the house hit me like a punch to the gut. It was glowing, lights strung across the porch, cars lining the street, music playing in the background, laughter spilling out of open windows like I'd stumbled onto a scene from a commercial for the perfect family life. Except I wasn't part of that picture. I parked a block away and walked. Every step felt colder than the last. I knew most of the faces as I approached: old neighbors, a couple of my mom's coworkers, even a few distant relatives I hadn't seen since Clarissa's wedding. I stayed in the shadows, walking up the side path past the lavender bushes I had planted from cuttings Grandma used to grow. My stomach twisted when I saw the kitchen window open, and inside my mom was arranging dessert trays, wearing the silk blouse she used to say she was saving for something special. Clarissa stood next to her, laughing, pouring wine, looking completely at home. My dad was holding court in the living room, drink in hand, telling a story to a group of guests, smiling like nothing in the world had ever gone wrong. I stepped through the side gate, through the back entrance, walked straight into the house I had bought, and said the words I'd been holding in since that Facebook post. Wow, it's strange. Everyone's here except the person who paid for this place. The music didn't stop, but the room did. My mom froze, pastry tray trembling in her hands. Clarissa turned slowly, eyes wide. My dad's glass paused midair, like he couldn't decide if it was better to drink or run. I kept my voice calm, like I was just asking for a receipt. You didn't tell me the party was today. You didn't tell me Clarissa moved in. You didn't tell me I wasn't part of the plan. No one said anything. For a moment, the only sound was a spoon clinking into an empty glass behind me. My mom finally cleared her throat. Jennifer, you're making a scene. Can we talk outside? I didn't move. Why? So you can lie more comfortably without an audience? Clarissa stepped forward, all polished confidence. You're blowing this out of proportion. We were going to tell you. Tell me what I asked. That you've moved into the house I bought? That you threw a party without me, that now you're pretending it was some kind of shared family effort? She folded her arms. It was for Mom and Dad. Not everything is about you. I laughed, but it didn't sound funny. That's rich coming from you. My name's on the deed. You didn't contribute a cent. I handed this house over for them, not for you to play homemaker in it. My mom stepped in, trying to soften the moment. Jen, sweetheart, let's not do this here. Your father and I thought it would make sense. Clarissa has the kids. She's between homes. It's just until things settle down. I looked at my dad. You said nothing about this, he shrugged. I didn't know how to bring it up. You mean you knew it would hurt me, I said. But you let it happen anyway. Clarissa tried again. We just wanted to give the twins stability. They're going through a lot. We didn't mean to hurt you, but you did, I said. You made a decision to erase me. Again. And I'm done letting that happen. I pulled the property deed from my bag and laid it on the kitchen counter. I'm the legal owner. No one lives here without my permission, and I'm giving you 48 hours to leave. Gasps echoed behind me. Clarissa's face drained. My mom looked like someone had slapped her. My dad stepped forward, almost pleading. Jennifer, we're family. You can't just kick us out. I looked at all three of them, calm and clear. No, you did that when you acted like I didn't exist. The guests started murmuring, gathering their things. No one said goodbye. No one tried to defend them. And when I stepped outside and stood on the porch alone, watching the cars pull away one by one, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt hollow. Because I never wanted revenge. I wanted belonging. I wanted someone to notice. But when they didn't, I learned how to build my own space, and now that they wanted to share it without asking, I had to draw the line. The next morning, I packed my things, left the house empty, and flew back to New York. I didn't answer any texts. I didn't check voicemails. I just walked into my apartment, poured myself a glass of water, and stared out at the skyline. That night, I received an email from my mom. It said, I hope you're proud. Your grandparents would be ashamed. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't have words, but because I had nothing left to explain. For once, I had chosen myself, and I wasn't going to apologize for it. In the days that followed, the silence felt louder than any argument could have been. I didn't block anyone, but I muted their numbers, turned off notifications, and let the messages collect in a separate folder like dust on an old shelf. They came in waves: first, Guilt-tripping ones from my mother telling me I had gone too far, that I was punishing them for ancient mistakes, that I had no idea how much I had embarrassed them in front of everyone. Then came the anger, the passive-aggressive comments about how I'd always been cold, how I never tried to be part of the family, how money had made me arrogant. And somewhere in between, Clarissa chimed in with her usual tone of superiority masked as victimhood, writing things like, "You've always been dramatic, Jen. We were just trying to make the best of things, but none of it reached me the way it used to." I didn't spiral. I didn't second guess. I didn't sit on my couch crying into a pillow like the old days, wondering if maybe, just maybe, it really was me who didn't know how to love. Because for the first time in my life, I was seeing things clearly. I wasn't reacting emotionally. I was responding with boundaries. The Pleasant Hill house sat empty for a few weeks while I thought about what to do next. I wasn't ready to go back. Every room still held the ghost of what I had hoped it would become, a place of healing, a quiet redemption story for all the years I had been overlooked. But the truth was, I couldn't force a family to love me. I couldn't plant lavender in their backyard and expect it to grow into something it never had the roots for. So I called a real estate agent, explained the situation, and put the house on the market. I didn't even visit it again. I handed the keys to the agent, signed the paperwork remotely, and told her I didn't need to know the buyers. I just needed it to go. A few months later, it sold above market value. The profit wasn't just money, it was freedom. I took it, added it to my savings, and invested in a long-term portfolio that could sustain me through anything. That night, I bought myself a bottle of wine, lit a candle on my tiny Manhattan balcony, and toasted not to success, but to self-respect. A week after the sale closed, I got a final message from my dad. No anger this time, just a short, tired paragraph saying, "We're moving back to the apartment in Hayward. It's tight. Clarissa's staying with us for now. I guess this is goodbye for real this time." I stared at the screen, reread it twice, and didn't feel what I expected to. No rage, no triumph, just a deep, quiet sadness that somehow, despite everything I'd offered, they still couldn't see past their own pride. I didn't reply. I archived it not out of spite, but because I'd finally accepted something that took me decades to understand. Some relationships don't die with explosions, they just wear out like old rope frayed by years of unspoken things. I started focusing more on my life in New York. I joined a mentorship program for young women entering finance. I gave talks at local colleges telling girls who looked like they hadn't been believed in often enough that their worth wasn't up for debate. I founded a scholarship in my grandparents' name, the Henderson Grant, for first-generation college students who came from families where love had to be earned through silence and service. I didn't make big announcements about it. I just did it because it felt right. And maybe it was my way of keeping a part of them alive in the world. My apartment in Tribeca was small, but it had a balcony where the light hit just right in the mornings, and every Sunday, I'd sit there with coffee and write in the leather journal my grandmother gave me. Sometimes it was financial goals, sometimes just scattered thoughts. Sometimes a single sentence like, "Today I feel calm," and that was enough. I saw friends more, made space for joy, took a pottery class even though I was terrible at it, started reading novels again. Slowly, the version of me that had existed only to prove something faded, and in her place was someone who simply existed because she could. But every now and then I'd drive past the apartment building in Hayward. I never stopped. I just looked. On one trip, I saw Clarissa on the balcony, pacing with her phone in one hand and a toddler on her hip. My mother appeared behind her carrying a plastic tray of sandwiches. My dad was on the curb unloading groceries. They looked worn, tired, like a house without foundation. I didn't feel smug. I didn't feel pity. Just an echo of something that might have once been hope. Then I drove away. I didn't need to explain my side anymore. They had already told the world their version of me, and I had already built a life that didn't need their permission. That winter, while cleaning out an old storage box, I found a sealed letter tucked between my college acceptance documents. It was from my grandmother, dated 2 weeks before she passed. Her handwriting was uneven, but her words were steady. "Jenny, if you ever wonder whether you did the right thing, just remember we saw you. We chose you. Not because you were perfect, but because you were true. Never let anyone make you question that." I cried, but it wasn't the kind of crying that breaks you. It was the kind that puts pieces back in place. I folded the letter and slid it into the back of my journal next to my own words that read, "One day, I'll stop trying to earn love from people who only give it on their terms." And that day had come. I didn't reach out to my family again. Not out of bitterness, but out of peace. I didn't need to heal through them anymore. I had done that on my own. And as strange as it sounds, that realization didn't feel like losing family. It felt like finally creating one, starting with myself. It had been almost a year since I sold the house in Pleasant Hill, and I thought that chapter of my life was closed for good, like sealing a box and pushing it to the back of the attic. Dusty but forgotten until the past found a new way to knock on my door and remind me that healing isn't always a straight line. It loops and doubles back and sometimes waits for you in unexpected places. And for me, it waited in an inbox marked unread, tucked between newsletters and bank alerts. Subject line, Family Estate Inquiry. Sent by a law firm I didn't recognize. My stomach turned before I even clicked on it. And for a brief second, I wondered if they were trying to contest the will to dig up something from the past and twist it into a favor ode. But when I opened it, the message was simple. A notification that a distant uncle had passed someone I barely knew. And in his belongings were a series of letters addressed to various family members. One of them labeled to Jennifer Collins, daughter of Margaret, which already felt off because no one in my family had ever introduced me with that kind of formality, especially not in writing, but curiosity won over discomfort. And a week later, a manila envelope arrived at my apartment, stamped and signed, and I opened it slowly, half expecting nothing more than a dusty apology or some forgotten memory, but inside was something else entirely, a photocopy of an old family tree, marked up with notes, underlines, arrows pointing toward names I didn't recognize, and a short, handwritten page that simply said, "You never got the truth and maybe you don't care anymore. But I needed someone in this family to know what really happened." Followed by a story that unraveled everything I thought I understood about my mother and why she had always kept me at arm's length, because apparently when she got pregnant with me, she hadn't wanted to keep the baby. And it wasn't some cold, cruel rejection. It was fear, financial strain, emotional exhaustion, and the weight of already raising Clarissa with the pressure of perfection on her back. And the decision had been made to quietly consider adoption, even discussed with an agency, until my grandparents stepped in and offered an ultimatum. If she gave me up, they would cut ties completely. No more help, no more support, no inheritance, nothing. And it was only then, under pressure, that she chose to keep me, but not out of love, not out of maternal instinct, but out of necessity. And suddenly everything made more sense, not in a way that excused her distance, but in a way that explained the ghost-like way I was raised. Not hated, just handled, never embraced, always endured, like a permanent reminder of a moment she never wanted to relive. And while reading that letter didn't erase the years of silence, it did soften the edges a little, not enough to rebuild anything, but enough to let me stop asking why she never looked at me the way other mothers looked at their daughters, because the truth is, she couldn't not with what she carried. And maybe that wasn't her fault, maybe it wasn't mine either. Maybe it just was. And knowing that didn't change my present, but it finally gave me a map for the past. One that didn't blame me for growing up in shadows I didn't cast. And when I finished reading it, I didn't cry. I just sat still, letting it settle, breathing through a wave of something I couldn't name, but recognized all the same, like a splinter, working its way out of skin after being buried so long you forgot it was there. And that night, instead of writing in my journal, I pulled out the letter and slipped it between the pages. Not to reread, but to keep as a reminder that sometimes the answers don't come when you need them. They come when you're finally strong enough to hold them without breaking. And in the weeks that followed, something inside me shifted, like I'd finally stopped waiting for an apology that would never come. Because now I understood it would have never been enough anyway, and with that came a strange kind of freedom. Not loud or triumphant, but quiet and grounding. The kind that makes space in your chest for new things to grow, and it showed up in small ways, like how I started sleeping through the night more often, or how I smiled back at strangers without feeling like it was something I had to force. And even at work, people noticed. One colleague said, "You seem lighter," and I just nodded. Not explaining, because not everything has to be spoken to be true. And around that time, I started thinking more about what I wanted my future to look like. Not just career goals or investment targets, but something deeper, more human, something soft and warm and lasting. And for the first time, I let myself imagine what it might be like to build my own family, not in the traditional sense. Not to replace the one I came from, but to create something entirely new, made of laughter and safety and unconditional love. Something without debt or guilt or ghosts hanging in the corners. And I wasn't in a relationship. I wasn't even dating seriously, but I found myself walking past parks and imagining a daughter with my eyes and my stubbornness and my quiet fire. Someone I'd raised to believe she was enough from the moment she was born. Someone who'd never have to question if she was wanted, because I'd tell her every single day until she believed it with her whole heart, and maybe that dream was still far away. But it was the first time it felt like more than fantasy, it felt possible. And that possibility filled me with a kind of peace I didn't know I needed. And it was in that space, that clarity, that I made one more decision, something that had been circling in my mind for months, waiting for the right moment. And now it was time. I booked a ticket to Florence, the city my grandmother had always wanted to visit but never had the chance. And I planned a solo trip, not to run from anything, but to honor what she gave me. The courage to leave, the strength to stay gone, and the heart to build something from scratch. And as I packed, I included the journal, the letter, and one of her scarves. And I knew this trip wouldn't be a goodbye but a beginning. And as I zipped my suitcase, I felt it again, that quiet truth rising inside me. Not everyone gets the family they're born into, but some of us are lucky enough to create the one we always needed. And I wasn't there yet, but I was getting closer with every step. Florence didn't heal me, but it reminded me that beauty can exist even in places you never thought you'd reach. And walking those sunlit streets with a scarf tied around my neck that still faintly smelled like my grandmother's lavender drawer, I felt like she was beside me, not as a ghost, but as proof that love, when true, never really leaves. It just finds new ways to whisper. And on the third morning, I sat on the steps of the Duomo with a cappuccino in hand, watching tourists fumble with maps and cameras, and for the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about what I had escaped. I was thinking about what I was building. Not in a grand, dramatic way, but in those quiet daily choices I now made for myself. What I wore, what I read, what I allowed into my life, and what I finally blessedly shut out. And while I didn't spend the trip soul-searching in museums or writing long journal entries under the Tuscan sun, I did send a single postcard, not to my family, but to myself, addressed to my New York apartment, and all I wrote was, "You made it. And you didn't lose yourself along the way," and by the time it arrived back home a week later, bent at the corners and smudged from the journey, I pinned it to my refrigerator, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that survival isn't just about endurance, it's about becoming someone you actually want to live with. And I had finally done that quietly, completely without applause. And when I got back from the trip, everything that used to feel urgent had lost its volume. The missed calls from Clarissa had stopped months ago. My parents hadn't written since the day I ignored my father's final message, and I no longer opened their emails. I archived them without reading, not in anger but in peace, because some doors once closed don't need to be reopened just to prove they stayed shut for a reason. And around that time, something unexpected happened. I was invited to speak at a women's financial summit in Chicago, not just about market trends or investment strategies, but about personal resilience, financial autonomy, and how building a secure life often starts from emotional bankruptcy. And when I stood on that stage, microphone in hand, I wasn't nervous. I wasn't even trying to impress anyone. I just told the truth, and I watched faces shift in the crowd. Not because my story was special, but because it was familiar. And after the session, a young woman, maybe 21, stopped me and said, "You made me believe I can leave too," and I smiled, because that's all I had ever wanted. Not revenge, not credit, just the ability to light a path for someone else like my grandparents once lit mine. And after that, things started to bloom again, slowly. Naturally, I got promoted to lead a strategic team. I adopted a rescue dog who insists on sleeping under my desk, and I reconnected with a former classmate named Reese, someone who once sat beside me in sophomore econometrics and now ran a nonprofit focused on youth mentorship. We met for lunch as old friends, but something in the way he looked at me really looked, not past me, not through me, felt different. And over the next few months, it became more than lunches and long walks. It became conversations about how we'd both spent too long trying to earn love from people who never knew how to give it, and how we were now learning to receive it without performing. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything to be cared for, and it felt strange at first, that kind of softness, but good, like stepping into a warm room after years in the cold. And though I hadn't planned on love, I realized maybe this version of it, the quiet, honest kind, was worth making space for. And one evening on our walk back from a bookstore, I told him everything. Not in one breath, but piece by piece, about the house, the betrayal, the letter, the final confrontation, and he didn't flinch or try to fix it. He just listened, then said, "That must have taken everything you had," and I nodded, because yes, it did, but it also gave me something I never had before myself. And now, looking back, I don't romanticize the struggle. I don't tie it up with ribbons and pretend it was all meant to happen this way. I don't pretend forgiveness is always possible, because sometimes it's not. Sometimes healing means walking away and choosing not to return, and I've learned that doesn't make you cold, it makes you whole. And now, years after that final argument, after the messages faded and the silence settled, I look around at my life and it's not flashy or dramatic, but it's mine, from the furniture I chose to the people I let in, from the weekends spent cooking quietly to the letters I write to the future daughter I hope to raise one day. Not because I'm trying to rewrite my childhood, but because I believe cycles can be broken if we're willing to do the hard work. And if I ever do become a mother, I won't teach her to be small to survive. I'll teach her that her voice belongs in every room she enters, that her love isn't something she has to earn by being perfect. And if she ever looks at me and asks if she matters, I won't need to say anything because she'll already know from the way I hold her, listen to her, fight for her. And if she ever stumbles, I won't shame her. I'll sit beside her until she finds her footing again. And when people ask me about my own family, I don't lie, but I don't dwell either. I simply say, we're not close, and that's enough, because I don't owe my pain to anyone for entertainment, and I don't need to revisit the past to validate the present. And one day, if Clarissa ever shows up at my door or my parents reach out in their twilight years asking for peace, I don't know what I'll say. Maybe nothing, maybe something kind but final. But what I do know is, I'll never give away the parts of myself I fought so hard to reclaim. Not even for the illusion of closure, because some bridges don't burn in anger, they burn in recognition. And once you see clearly, you can't unsee it. And so this is where I leave that version of me behind: the daughter who wanted to be chosen, the sister who waited to be included, the girl who stood in doorways hoping to be seen, and in her place is a woman who knows her worth, doesn't shrink when someone refuses to see it, who wakes up every morning not wondering if she's enough but knowing she is. And if you're listening to this wondering whether it's too late to start over, I promise you it isn't, because starting over isn't about fixing the past. It's about finally choosing a future that feels like yours and mine. Starts here with no revenge, no apology, just freedom. Story 2. Hi there, I'm 34 years old and go by Olivia. I work as the finance director for a tech business and reside in Denver, Colorado. People frequently believe that I have it all together: a steady job, no children, and sufficient funds for investments or travel. They fail to see how frequently I've been the bank, the fixer, and the assistants in my family. However, I never thought that the individuals I continued to stand by would turn out to be the ones who betrayed me so severely. One beautiful weekend in late April was the beginning of it all. In San Diego, my younger brother Liam was getting married. The event was placed on a gorgeous beach. Twinkle lights stretched over palm trees, white linen seats, gentle waves, and a soft blue sky. Visitors danced barefoot on the sand, laughed, and posed for pictures. You'd never know. I had provided the majority of the funding for the entire setup. My parents were retired and on limited incomes, and Liam and his fiancée had recently paid off their college debts. So without hesitation, I jumped in. I covered the cost of the flowers, the meals, the venue deposit, and even the photographs. Liam and his new bride were commended by everybody for organizing such a beautiful wedding. My name is not mentioned. It didn't bother me. I told myself I didn't, however. It was, after all, family. Ryan, my boyfriend, flew from Denver to join me. Even though we hadn't formally planned to be married yet, we both understood where we were going after 2 years of dating. He witnessed my generosity toward my family and, more significantly, my lack of reciprocation. He never pushed, though. He gave me the freedom to realize things on my own time. The night before the wedding. Following the last dance, I stood at the venue's edge, feeling the ocean wind caress my skin as I held my sandals. "Thanks for everything, Liv," Liam murmured, giving me a hard embrace. "You truly delivered." I clasped his hand and grinned, but I felt a slight pang at the back of my chest. It had nothing to do with gratitude. Being noticed was the goal. Ryan and I went back to the motel that evening. We were so happy that we fell asleep in one another's arms after discussing the wedding and laughing about the aunt who sobbed too much during the vows. While I was falling asleep, I was unaware that a terrible event was already happening, something that would completely alter the situation. Ryan and I were checking out of the motel early the next morning. I was looking through my phone to get the hotel reservation after tossing my duffel bag over my shoulder when I made the decision to launch my banking app. Before leaving for the airport, a brief inspection. My throat tightened and my fingers became rigid at what I saw. There has been a significant decline in my account balance. It was $19,000 lower. In the midst of the hotel lobby, I froze. Carts sliding across tile floors, people sweeping past me. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee. It all went away. Unable to blink, my eyes were fixed on the screen. "What is it?" Wheeling our bags behind me, Ryan asked. I took a while to respond. My lips were parched. I murmured, nearly whispering, Ryan, the $19,000 is gone. He grabbed my phone out of my grasp and began looking through the transaction history. Have you lately made any significant transfers? We both knew the answer when he asked. I had more than $28,000 in my checking account only last week. Since then, I had not made any significant purchases. He scrolled through the past and I watched. He clenched his jaw. He tilted the screen and said, Here, take a look. 3 changes. Last night, everything was finished in a single minute. Jenna Collins received $6,000, $7,000 to Scott Collins. Marcia Green was paid $6,000. They were all recorded as Zelle transfers at 10:47 p.m. I gasped. I answered slowly, I was in the shower at that time. Following the ceremony, Ryan turned to face me with a solemn gaze. I take it you didn't mail these, no? Not at all. Then, he added bluntly, someone used your phone. Both your password and your app were accessible to them. As soon as we entered the elevator, my legs began to wobble. I tried to quiet the noise in my ears by leaning against the mirrored wall. I had always been the assist, sending money without asking, paying the bills, and purchasing the last-minute airline tickets. However, it didn't help. It was stealing. Worst of all, I already knew who was responsible. My phone rang as soon as we entered the hotel foyer. Her mother was the one. I responded after taking a deep breath. I tried not to tremble when I said, Mom, I have a question for you. As if she were in the kitchen with someone else, there was a lull on the other end of the line, followed by distant talk and the sound of clinking dishes. Her voice was informal, even upbeat. Good morning, my love. Is everything all right? Last night, 3 sizable transactions were made to my bank account, which I swallowed. To you, Scott and Jenna. Are you familiar with that? She really giggled after another pause, as if I had just recalled her of something funny. Oh, that. I wanted to know when you would notice. To be honest, it wasn't as much as I had anticipated. My heart stopped beating. What are you saying? According to Jenna, keeping so much in your account was wasteful. Breezily, she remarked, so we divided it. Consider it Liam's wedding present. I was immobile as I stood still in the hotel lobby. Nothing caught their attention. I had ringing in my ears. While I was taking a shower, you stole my phone. My voice cracked as I asked, Oh, Olivia, don't be so dramatic. You're not dating. Doing well, no children. You ought to lend a hand. That's the role of family. Ryan moved in closer and removed the phone from my grasp. Calmly but firmly, he said, Ma'am, you just acknowledged committing a crime. It is theft to take money out of someone else's account without their consent. She lost her temper. Do you enjoy interfering in family affairs, or are you now a lawyer? I reclaimed the phone. I said, Mom, in a softer tone. Who sent those transfers after stealing my phone, Jenna? Without embarrassment, she answered. She guessed her password. It wasn't hard. Something about your old cat, right? And then she hung up. I stared at the blank screen in disbelief. The woman who had raised me had just laughed in my face. After helping herself to my life savings, it wasn't just betrayal. It was bold, unapologetic theft from the people I had trusted the most. Ryan took my hand gently but firmly. We're not letting this go. And neither was I. We didn't even stop to breathe after the call ended. I told Ryan I wanted to speak to them in person. I needed to see their faces. When I asked them why he didn't question me, he just nodded and drove us to my mother's house. The drive through the San Diego suburbs felt surreal. The sun was out, birds chirped, and the sky was the same soft blue from the wedding. But I felt nothing. It was like I had been scooped out from the inside before we could ring the bell. The door opened. Jenna stood there in a tank top and yoga pants holding a coffee mug. She gave me a half smile like I was early for brunch. Oh, Olivia, you came back. I walked right past her inside. My mother, Marcia, was sitting in the living room sorting through Liam's wedding photos. Scott, Jenna's husband, had his feet on the coffee table sipping espresso. Like it was Sunday morning and nothing had happened. We need to talk, I said, standing firm in the center of the room. Marcia looked up calmly about the money. Yes, I said, my voice sharp. I want to know who gave you the right to go into my bank account and take $19,000. Jenna shrugged and plopped onto the couch. You should have used a better password. Mr. Whiskers was too easy. She laughed like it was a joke. Scott chuckled. I told her not to do it, but she said you wouldn't care. You think I wouldn't care? My fist clenched. My voice was rising. You took $19,000 from me while I was in the shower. You didn't ask, you didn't even hint. You just helped yourselves. Marcia stood slowly, setting down the photo album. Olivia, don't blow this out of proportion. It was for Liam's wedding. You're not dating. You make good money, Liam. Starting a new life. Families help each other. Helping means I agreed to it. I snapped. What you did was theft. Jenna rolled her eyes. We didn't ask because you always act generous but never really give. We're tired of begging, Scott added with a smirk. You still have 9,000 left. We didn't clean you out, that was it. My voice dropped to a cold whisper. You didn't just take my money, you stole my trust. The room fell silent. Then Marcia's face twisted. How dare you speak to me like that? She shouted. And before I could react, she raised her hand and slapped me across the face. The sound rang through the room like thunder. Ryan was on his feet in an instant, grabbing my arm and stepping in front of me. Enough, he snarled, turning toward Marcia. Touch her again and you'll deal with the cops. I stood there, my cheek burning, my heart pumping, my head blank. That smack didn't simply hurt my skin. It broke any notion I had left of this being a misunderstanding. It wasn't. They understood exactly what they were doing. I looked around at the three of them. Now it's not only that I added, it's assault. And I turned and went out the door, this time without looking back. We drove back to the motel in quiet. I clutched Ryan's hand the entire time, but I couldn't talk. My cheeks still ached from the slap. But what stung more was the icy certainty creeping inside me. This wasn't a moment of crazy. I had never wanted to acknowledge this trend. I was worn out beyond repair by the time we touched down in Denver that night. I refrained from unpacking. I neglected to check my email. My thoughts were racing as I sat on the couch and gazed at the floor. I opened my laptop the following afternoon and started retrieving bank statements. I wanted evidence, but I convinced myself it was simply curiosity. Evidence that I wasn't thinking this, that the awful night wasn't unique. One bad decision made by Marcia or Jenna. I had to confront the reality that I had been evading for years. I began underlining each financial transaction pertaining to my family after printing out my statements. For Jenna and Scott, red. For Marcia, blue. Liam is represented by yellow. Line by line, month after month. The pile of papers on my dining table soon became substantial. I've transferred just over $42,000 over the last 3 years, which includes $2,000 for rent tuition assistance, vehicle repairs, medical crises, birthday parties, Christmas gifts, roof leaks, and missing phones till payday. Only this once. There was never a single instance, each time I paused. Guilt was placed on top like icing. We are related. Olivia. You're doing well. You're not having any difficulties. You have no children at all. You don't really need the money. They had convinced me. I believed I was being responsible, kind, and encouraging. I hadn't been helpful, though. I had been giving in. Jenna contacted me crying at the time, claiming that her daughter Madison had broken her arm and they were unable to pay for it. In the midst of my workday, I sent $500. I later discovered that everything was covered by insurance. Jenna had utilized the funds to make a down payment on Scott's new iPhone. While I marked another transaction, Ryan took a seat next to me. Have you have any food today? I gave a head shake. I'm not hungry. Take a look at this. I've been treated like an ATM by them. I couldn't see it since I'm blind. He removed one of the pages from my grasp with gentleness. You weren't blind. You made an effort to adore them. I didn't respond. I was unable to. Then he inquired in a low voice. Have you considered doing something? I paused. I answered slowly. If a stranger had taken $19,000 out of my account, I would file a report. He gave a nod. Why not? Right now, then. My palm clenched around the highlighter as I gazed at the pages. Why not? Yes. I sat in front of my laptop the following morning and gazed at the document I had named the truth. It included all of the money I had donated to my family over the previous 3 years together, with the dates, amounts, screenshots, and text exchanges. It was less like a family history and more like a criminal report. Beside me, Ryan set down his cup of tea. He whispered softly, You don't have to do this today. I said, yes, I do. I will never take a stance if I don't do so now. Without another word, he nodded. I gave a former coworker of mine who was now employed at a law firm that focused on financial matters a call. She put me in touch with Tina Hargrove, an experienced officer in the Family Financial Crimes Unit at the Colorado Office for Financial Crimes. Olivia Brooks, Miss. Later that afternoon, when I got to the workplace, Tina asked. She was calm in her 40s with piercing, observant eyes that were framed by no-nonsense glasses. Yes, I do need to report anything. It seems to me that family members are engaging in financial exploitation. Calmly, she remarked, let's sit down. I spent about an hour explaining everything to her. The $19,000 moves from my phone to Liam's wedding. The smack. Then came the years of guilt-tainted manipulation and unpaid loans. Tina took notes without speaking, only stopping to pose direct, focused queries. Finally, she inquired, have you got proof Ryan handed over the folder we had brought after opening it? Bank records. Logs are transferred. Text screenshots. Audio recording of the altercation at Marcia Green's residence. Tina turned the file over. Her eyes narrowed a little, but her face remained the same. It's not unusual, she said. It's rare to hear someone actually speak up. I gave a nod. I believed for a long time that the peaceful course of action was to remain silent. However, if you are the only one experiencing pain, it is not peace. She returned the nod. We'll start a preliminary inquiry. We are going to check the transactions, obtain digital logs, monitor the IP addresses used for the transfers, and speak with the participants. We will forward any evidence of unlawful access and intent to the district attorney. I paused. Are they going to be taken into custody? It depends. Tina answered. Yes, if intent is established and the case proceeds. However, there will be legal repercussions in either case. Ryan grabbed my hand as we got up to go. I was trembling a little, but not because I was afraid. Not against strangers, but against my own kin. I had just begun a legal war. However, I felt no remorse. I felt prepared. The word quickly got around. I was still throwing in bed when I received the first message early the next morning. Crimson eyes after a restless night. Marcia. Mom. Olivia. What are you doing? Did you actually report this? Call me immediately. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed incessantly. Text after text from Jenna Scott, and even a couple from Liam, but his tone was tentative, apprehensive. But Jenna and Scott, their words were poisonous. Jenna, are you out of your mind? You're attempting to send your whole family to jail over a few $1,000. You're really self-centered, Scott. Madison's life is being ruined by you. The children don't matter to you. I reared you, Marcia, and now you're betraying your own family. You're heartless. I silently gazed at my phone. The word sorry did not appear in any of the messages. Not a single acknowledgement of their actions. Only guilt, anger, charges. Ryan entered the room with 2 coffee mugs in his hands. He lit up in my hand as he glanced at the television. I nodded, still blaming you. I feel as though I have betrayed them. He removed the phone from my hand and sat next to me. Olivia, you didn't betray them. You were betrayed by them. They're not upset with you because of your wrongdoing. They're upset because you refused to be used by them for the first time. Nothing struck as deeply as it. I recalled how fast they twisted and how many times I had hesitated before delivering money. Family is meant to assist. You're not having any difficulties. Why are you so self-centered then? If it wasn't vital, we wouldn't inquire. However, it never happened once. Furthermore, it was never reimbursed. My phone called once more that afternoon. Something told me I had to confront it even though I almost let it go to voicemail. I replied. Marcia's tone was piercing. Her voice was angry. Olivia, you have let me down. When people learn that you are taking your family to court, what will they think? Your own blood is being humiliated? I shut my eyes. I could still feel the burn of her palm on my cheeks. You stole my money, Mom, without my consent. You gave me a smack. You're behaving as though that's typical. You've had enough. She let out a bark. You have no children at all. You didn't care about that money. I spoke steadily. Nobody is entitled to take, simply due to their assumption that I can afford it. You didn't inquire. You took something. That smack too? It was assault. She cautioned, you're forcing yourself out of this family. If you find yourself alone, don't blame me. I inhaled deeply. When the line was crossed, everyone made their decision. Finally, I'm sketching it. The line died. There was uneasy stillness for 3 days. Then one gloomy day, my Denver apartment's windows were stained by light rain. The doorbell rang. Ryan raised his head from his computer. Did you have any expectations I went to respond to it after shaking my head? I recognized the person standing on the porch through the glass, crammed hands into jacket pockets, hunched shoulders, staring at the ground. Liam. I carefully opened the door. Hello? Uncertain of what to anticipate, I said. His expression was a combination of regret and shame as he glanced up. May I enter? Only for a few of minutes. After a moment of hesitation, I moved aside. We sat at the dining table where thick, color-coded tiles still held my financial records. Liam gave them a quick look but held his tongue. Between us, the air seemed thick. Are you doing all right? Gently, he inquired. I'm making it. Flatly, I replied. You're aware of what's happening. He gave a nod. Yes, I do. I finally understand everything. I simply had no idea what to do. Liam, why are you here? I folded my arms and asked. He inhaled deeply. Because I have to be honest with you. I was unaware that your phone would be taken that evening. I didn't ask them to. However, I have witnessed it occur before. I squinted. What are you saying? Last year I heard Jenna and Scott discussing ways to borrow from you without causing you any trouble. I noticed my mother making a list. Back to school birthdays, holidays, and deciding what to ask for and when. And I said nothing. I did not want to get expelled. I recently became a parent. I felt afraid. I remained silent. I was too shocked. Liam's eyes were sparkling as he glanced up at me. However, Mom ordered me to keep quiet when you filed a report. She advised me to claim ignorance if I were summoned to court. Olivia. I can't do that. Not to you. No more. My vision was obscured by tears. Do you intend to testify? He gave a nod. I'll share all I know with the court. I'll explain that it wasn't a coincidence. It was prearranged. Additionally, it has been going on for years. I grabbed his hand from the other side of the table. Are you certain this implies that they will also turn against you, you know? I understand, Liam answered. However, truth is what I would pick if I had to choose. You are my choice. On a soggy Monday morning, the preliminary hearing was set to take place in the Jefferson County Courthouse. I was driven there in quiet by Ryan. I clutched a folder containing printouts, proof, and agony as I sat in the passenger seat. My heart felt like it would burst when we walked into the courtroom. Jenna and Scott, who were wearing business casual, sat rigidly across the aisle with expressionless faces. They refused to look at me. Marcia, my mother, wasn't present. In order to conveniently escape taking responsibility for her actions, she had filed a legal excuse claiming that she was ill. However, Liam was present. He took a seat next to me. Stable yet stiff shoulders. For a moment, I touched his knee. He breathed gently as he nodded. The judge came in. In her 60s, the Honorable Judge Nora Higgins was a perceptive woman with short gray hair and an attention-grabbing manner. The courtroom became silent as she said, Preliminary evidence in case number 8826B is being heard today. The accusations include 1 count of violent assault, asset theft, and improper access to a personal bank account. The final portion was for the smack indeed. Everything was set forth by the prosecution. The unlawful access via my stolen phone and the financial transfers. Voice memos, screenshots, statements, and years of unpaid money. Liam's time came next. He approached the witness box at a leisurely pace. His voice was steady, yet his outfit was a little crumpled. He remarked, At first, I didn't want to believe what was happening. However, I did see it. Olivia, my sister, was being exploited rather than assisted, utilized. He claimed to have overheard Scott and Jenna discussing how to approach people for money without raising suspicions. He mentioned our mother's financial asset calendar. He also acknowledged that he was aware that Jenna had figured out my password years prior. She boasted about it several times. He then gave the judge a direct look and stated something that will always stick in my memory. I was afraid, so I said nothing. But I'm over my fear. Money wasn't the only factor here. They gained her trust and never expressed regret. They simply had higher expectations. There was silence in the room. Judge Higgins silently observed him while tapping her pen on her folder. Squeeze my hand, Ryan. I stood next to Liam in the corridor after the hearing was over. Are you all right? He gave a nod. Today I lost them. No, you still have me, I muttered, meeting his gaze. And I'm proud of you for the first time in my life. I went back to the Jefferson County Courthouse for the final decision a week later. I walked through the courthouse doors holding Ryan's hand while wearing a plain blue dress. Scott and Jenna were already sat inside, their body language tight but their faces blank. Once again, Marcia was nowhere to be found. It should come as no surprise when Judge Nora Higgins arrived in the courtroom and immediately got to work. The court has examined every piece of evidence that was presented. Unauthorized bank transactions, text message records, Mr. Liam Brooks's witness statements, and the audio recording made at the defendant's home. Marcia Green's physical attack during the altercation is one example of this. I took a deep breath. The smack had not been forgotten even without Marcia. Justice's memory was longer than my family anticipated. The defendants, Jenna Collins and Scott Collins, are found guilty by the court of unlawfully accessing and stealing $19,000 worth of personal property. The plaintiff's bodily ailments and mental distress are also acknowledged by the court. Judge Higgins resumed one after adjusting her spectacles. Jenna and Scott Collins have been placed on supervised probation for 3 years. 2. They have 90 days to pay back Miss Olivia Brooks the entire $19,000. 3. Miss Marcia Green receives an extra $6,000 in emotional damages. Despite being absent, he was fined $2,000 and found guilty of violent assault. In addition, she receives a 6-month suspended prison sentence and obligatory anger management therapy. 5. All 3 are the subject of a 5-year restraining order. By every means, Jenna, Scott, and Marcia are avoiding communication with Olivia Brooks. 6. The defendants are responsible for paying all court fees. There was silence in the room. Jenna's face went pallid as a ghost. Their lawyer turned his head away as Scott said something to him. I was paralyzed by the odd silent weight of justice finally sinking in, not by terror. Liam put his hand on my shoulder. You succeeded? Ryan leaned closer. You did more than simply safeguard your finances. You kept your peace. I carefully rose up, taking one last look around the courtroom. I felt like the accused when I first arrived here. Not sure. Sentimental. Torn. Now, however, I held my head high. My family was broken by me. They broke themselves. I just decided to stop being a quiet victim. When we left the courthouse, I hardly noticed that the steps were slippery from the melting rain. Now the world felt altered. It's not softer. Clearer, but not easier. I sat on the couch the same evening, wrapped in a blanket, and I stared at my phone, which was muted. Since the verdict, I hadn't switched it on, but curiosity finally got the better of me. I woke it up to a fresh text from an unknown number, hundreds of missed calls, and a few voicemails. Do you believe you have won, Gus? We will not bow down. I didn't have to see where it came from. Without hesitation, I erased it. 3 weeks went by without incident. After the court documents were detected in his employer's background check, Scott was fired. A court ruling frozen Jenna and Scott's joint accounts. Then their home was put into foreclosure. Liam sent me a text. I wanted to let you know that they failed to make 2 mortgage payments. Madison's enrollment was canceled by her school because of her late tuition. They're disintegrating. Calmly, I read it. No retribution, no satisfaction. Just the facts. Getting caught up. I didn't recognize the woman who left me a voicemail a few days later. Hello, I'm Teresa. On the forum, I read your essay. For 30 years, I have been providing for my daughter financially. I used to believe that I was simply being a good mother. I became aware that I wasn't being kind after reading your tale. They were controlling me. Thank you. I hit play once more. Tears are streaming down my face. I felt less alone for the first time in years. There were more messages, emails from unidentified people. Ladies, men, even a writer's guy. Thank you, Olivia. I ultimately quit donating $500 a month to my unemployed brother because of you. I feel free at last, even if he labeled me callous. Every message lessened the burden I had been bearing for so long. Ryan, meantime, became my silent rock. I never felt compelled to forgive him. He never attempted to ease my suffering. He simply remained. I was watering our balcony's small herb garden one evening. He carried a little navy blue velvet box and 2 glasses of red wine outdoors. He remained silent. He said, "I thought I'd wait. But then I understood that you are the one person I want to spend the rest of my life with." A plain platinum ring with a solitary diamond was within. It was not ostentatious. It was not ostentatious. It was flawless. "Yes," I muttered. That year spring arrived slowly. Mornings were gentle and blossoming as the snow melted. And on one of those days near Seward Lake beneath a canopy of cherry blossoms, I headed toward the man who never left my side down a plain white road bordered with flowers. In a little ceremony, Ryan and I were married. No big guest list, no dazzling lights, only those who were important. The mother of Liam, Ryan. When my own family failed to support me, Helen, his sister Maya and a few close friends did. As if to bless us, the sun streamed through the trees. Liam's voice quivered as he approached to speak. At one point, I kept quiet out of fear of losing my family. However, I learned from my sister Olivia that true family does not instill fear. They don't exploit your generosity. They guard it. He held his glass out to me. "You have my admiration. It is a privilege for me to be your brother." My cheeks started to water, but not from suffering, but from recovery. I saw something significant as I looked around. I had not lost any relatives. I had just created room for people who loved me and let go of those who never did. I was drinking tea and looking at our wedding photo by the window when we got home that evening. In my own eyes, I noticed something I hadn't seen in a while, and Ryan's grin in the picture seemed like the gentlest promise. Calm. I wrote my first piece for a community psychology magazine later that month. I Set Boundaries and I'm Not Sorry was the title. Thousands read it in a few of days. Others emailed while others left comments. One statement was repeated repeatedly as several people sobbed. "Thank you. You are the reason I finally said no." I didn't write this to embarrass anyone. I wrote for those who, like me, had mistaken love for sacrifice and were brought up to think that devotion meant remaining mute in the face of brokenness. I had been described as uncaring, egotistical, and frigid by the folks I used to donate my last money to, not by strangers. And I finally got it now. Being kind means not allowing others to harm you. Family is not a justification for cruelty, and love is not a kind of financial servitude. Nothing was destroyed by me. I just sketched the boundary. And life brought me to individuals who appreciated who I was once I finally let go of those who just appreciated what I had to offer. Maya, Helen, Liam, and Ryan. The people that messaged me were strangers, the readers who identified with what I wrote. I had finally matured into a woman who recognized her value, replacing the little girl inside of me who was constantly seeking acceptance. And I'll smile and respond, I didn't just survive. If someone asks me what I learned from all of this today, I took back my name and made the unapologetic decision to choose peace. Please remember to like the video if this tale resonated with you or brought up memories of something personal. Leave a comment below and subscribe to receive weekly updates on more inspiring true life tales. We are able to elevate more voices like Olivia's because to your support. Story 3. As usual. Martha Brown was in her sun-drenched kitchen making coffee. Even though it had been 2 years since her retirement, she continued to rise early just like she did when she was an elementary school teacher. She continued to follow her strict daily schedule. Martha thought she should water the flower bed today as she looked at it through the window. She grinned softly when she saw a red cardinal settle on the birdhouse. "Grandma, good morning." I turned to face the animated voice that exploded into the kitchen. Noah was standing there, his arms out. He was wearing his jammies. Martha smiled uncontrollably. The 4-year-old's large blue eyes were already glistening with excitement for adventure despite his light brown hair being disheveled from sleep. "Greetings, little spaceman. Which planets are you currently investigating?" As she raised her grandchild, Martha inquired, "The Moon and Mars." "And that's Saturn indeed." "Saturn, the ring-wearing one." Noah joyfully clapped his hands. After placing Noah in his high chair, Martha started preparing breakfast pancakes. While her daughter Olivia worked early hours at the hospital, she took care of her grandson 3 days a week. Olivia was employed at the nearby main hospital as a nurse, really enthusiastic about her job on the pediatric ward. Olivia's approach was signaled by the sound of footsteps coming down the stairs. Her blonde hair was tied up in a handy ponytail, and she was dressed in her nurse's outfit. Mom, good morning. Once more you prepared breakfast. Many thanks. As usual. Olivia gave Martha a cheek kiss. She caressed her son's head while hurriedly pouring coffee into a mug. Being good and not bothering Grandma this morning. My career goal is to become an astronaut, Noah said with pride. I have no doubt that you will be. Although Martha could see the fatigue in her eyes, Olivia gave a soft smile. Has Thomas returned home yet? Mom? Martha flipped a pancake in response. Late yesterday night he arrived. At about 1 in the morning I heard his car arrive. He ought to be sleeping upstairs in the guest room. Olivia's face briefly became hazy. Most likely another issue at the location. Lately he has been quite busy. Olivia's husband Thomas was employed by a nearby construction business as a site supervisor. 3 years ago he wed Olivia, a tall guy with wide shoulders. His earnest demeanor and hard work had gained him Martha's trust. It must be hard for him at least until lately. When Martha saw her daughter's distressed countenance, she comforted her. Frequently, construction sites don't proceed as planned. He is also in a position of accountability. Olivia let out a quiet sigh. I am aware. Recently, though, she stopped in the middle of her sentence to look at her kid. Later we will discuss. Martha poured maple syrup, nodded, and positioned freshly prepared pancakes in front of Noah. She acted as though she was unaware of the conflict between her daughter and her son-in-law. Olivia had been getting angrier lately, and Thomas had been arriving home later. Although Martha was aware of the little shift in their relationship, she made an effort to remain composed, particularly in front of her grandson. Noah and I are going to daycare today. Martha brought up another topic. So you can concentrate on your job. I'll come get him at 3. Mom, it is really helpful. Olivia smiled appreciatively. Enjoy your day at Bright Star Daycare today, Noah. Will Lily be here? Noah inquired. His face was covered in syrup. As she responded, Martha dabbed at his mouth. You will. I'm sure. I take it that Lily is your friend? Noah's classmate, Lily, and he established a tight relationship right away. Martha had had conversations with Rachel, Lily's mother, who was involved in the PDA. Rachel was a sophisticated, attractive woman who always looked put together, but lately Martha had observed that Rachel had started to treat her coldly. Previously, they would greet one another with a grin, but in recent weeks Rachel appeared to be completely avoiding eye contact. Breakfast is ready, Thomas. No one answered when Olivia yelled up the stairs. The look of disappointment on her daughter's face was not missed by Martha. He's worn out, give him a bit more time to sleep. Martha spoke softly, but she was starting to feel a little resentful of her son-in-law, whom she had considered to be her son. Martha took Noah to Bright Star Childcare after breakfast. This daycare establishment, one of the most respected in the area, was situated in an Oakwood suburban neighborhood. When Olivia and Thomas arrived at the daycare, they were persuaded to send Noah there by the large playground, the well-lit classrooms, and most importantly, the knowledgeable staff. Taking Noah by the hand, Martha went inside. Parents were dropping off their kids one by one during the hectic morning hours. Near the entryway, Martha caught a glimpse of Rachel Rutherford. As Martha came over, she was whispering something in Lily's ear and kissing her goodbye. Rachel, clearly tense, nodded slightly and rushed off. Mrs. Brown, good morning. Noah, you appear energized today. Carol Jenkins. A childcare instructor smiled as she welcomed them. The kids adored her very much. Carol. Good morning. I appreciate you looking after him today. Martha returned the smile. Grandma Noah waved goodbye and hurried off to join his buddies in the play area. Martha looked at her mobile phone's messages on the way home. Olivia sent a text message. I need to discuss Thomas with you tonight, Mom. Martha let out a long sigh. After all, there appeared to be an issue. She silently prayed that her cherished grandson Noah's grin would never go away and that there would always be harmony in the family. After quickly checking her watch, Martha parked her vehicle in the Bright Star Daycare lot. The time was 3 Hujopers. It's time to go get Noah. However, something didn't feel right today. Carol was standing at the doorway, looking concerned, rather than smiling her normal soft grin. I was going to give you a call, Ms. Brown. Carol's voice was low. It appears like Noah is not feeling well today. Martha went straight to the classroom after Carol. Sitting on a couch in the corner, Noah had a dejected and wan appearance. Very different from the vivacious person he usually is. What's the matter, Noah? Grandma is here. Speaking quietly. Martha knelt before her grandchild. With a little head raise, Noah gave a feeble response. My stomach aches. He has been lying down since he began complaining of stomach problems this afternoon. Carol clarified that although he doesn't have a temperature, he isn't acting like himself. By placing a palm on Noah's forehead, Martha verified that he did not have a temperature. Carol, thank you. I'm going to drive him home. Noah sagged in the back seat and hardly talked. Martha placed her grandson on the couch and wrapped him with a thin blanket as soon as they arrived home. The hospital must have been busy since she was only able to leave a message when she contacted Olivia to explain the issue. After you get some rest, you'll feel better, Martha replied, caressing Noah's hair, although she was secretly anxious. Her grandson's lack of energy was out of the ordinary. When Olivia came home that night, Noah was feeling a little better. Despite his lack of appetite, he managed to consume a little amount of soup. What did he eat, I wonder? Olivia inquired anxiously. At childcare, did they provide something different? Martha gave a head shake. Carol reports that their lunch and snacks were the same as normal. By tomorrow, I believe he will be well. That forecast turned out to be accurate. Noah was fully recovered and back to his normal vivacious self by the next morning. Olivia and Martha felt a sense of relief, assuming it had only been a little annoyance. But a few days later, Noah became sick once more. Grandma. This time, Noah burst into tears as he raced into the kitchen as Martha was cooking dinner. My stomach aches. Noah experienced nausea many times during this episode, which was more severe than the last one. When Olivia arrived home, she brought Noah to see a doctor in the area. The diagnosis was not clear. Mild gastroenteritis might be the cause. According to the doctor, stomach problems are common among children. At this age, they have dietary sensitivity. For a period, feed him things that are easy to digest and observe his reaction. Following the doctor's recommendations, Olivia and Martha were particularly mindful of Noah's food. After a few days of observation, Noah appeared to have recovered his vigor. Youngsters might become unwell and then recover in an instant. Even though Martha didn't feel quite right, she told Olivia. The next Thursday was Bright Star Daycare's observation day, when parents and grandparents could observe the daycare's activities. Olivia was unable to leave the hospital because of an emergency surgery, therefore, Martha was going to attend in her stead. Many parents had already gathered at the childcare when Martha arrived. She watched Noah and his friends sing in a circle while she stood in a corner of the room grinning. At that moment, she noticed Rachel Rutherford across the room. With her eyes fixed on Martha, Rachel stood slightly away from the other moms. Her eyes had a chilly quality, and the way she gazed at Martha and Noah suggested that she was feeling something, perhaps even hatred. Martha shivered uncontrollably. When it was time for the kids to eat, Martha saw something intriguing. Lily offered Noah a tiny box when she sat next to him. Lily's remarks were welcomed by Noah, who grinned and nodded. Even though Martha couldn't hear what they were saying, she felt a little uncomfortable about the two of them exchanging anything. Carol was frowning a little, as if she had seen the same thing. She approached Lily and said something, to which Lily responds, "My mommy gave it to me loud enough for Martha to hear," with an innocent giggle. Carol came up to Martha as she was about to depart with Noah at the conclusion of the observation day. "Do you have a moment, Mrs. Brown, while they were a short distance apart?" Carol started talking softly. These days, I frequently witness Lily handing Noah something. Most likely snacks, but sharing is forbidden by our rules. Brought some snacks from home with the other kids? You know there are allergy issues. The fact that she was giving him something today surprised Martha. Is something wrong? Carol appeared uncertain. As yet, there isn't a direct issue. However, Mrs. Rutherford, Lily's mother, has been acting strangely lately, I've noticed. Don't you know who she is? Martha gave a nod. Indeed. Despite our numerous conversations, it seems like she has been avoiding me lately. The same impression has come to me. Carol scowled. Perhaps there is only a miscommunication, but it could be wise to exercise caution. Olivia arrived home late that evening. There were marks of exhaustion on her face. Thomas wasn't back yet. I need to talk to you, Mom. When Noah had gone to bed, Olivia was in the living room facing Martha. She had crimson eyes that seemed to be holding tears. What is it? What took place? Martha grasped the hand of her daughter. After taking a big breath, Olivia remarked, Thomas may be having an affair, in a quivering voice. Martha gave a start. What? What makes you believe that lately he has been acting oddly? He doesn't answer his phone, but he claims that work is the reason he's arriving home late. Or he is slow to respond to communications. Olivia persisted in suppressing her emotions. Additionally, I noticed communications from an unidentified woman on his phone last week. It was obvious that the subject matter went beyond a cordial friendship. Martha gave her daughter a firm embrace. Did you question him about it? Olivia gave a head shake. Mom, I'm afraid. I want to keep this family safe if it's true for Noah's sake. Martha was at a loss for words. Thomas was a decent husband and father, and she had trusted him, but his recent actions were definitely questionable. Martha heard Thomas returning home late that evening. Although Olivia had already isolated herself in the bedroom, she heard Noah sobbing in the kitchen as Martha was sipping tea. Martha hurried to the chamber of her grandchild. My stomach hurts a lot. Noah's face was twisted in agony as he sobbed. It was obvious that the agony was worse this time. Curled up, he was groaning in pain. Noah was rushed to the emergency department in the middle of the night by Martha, Olivia, and Thomas. The doctor's inspection revealed that it was just another gastrointestinal issue, but no one needed to be treated. In the hospital waiting area, Martha recalled Rachel's icy gaze and the scenario when Lily was giving Noah something and Carol's remarks were recalled. It might be wise to exercise caution. Martha stared out the window into the darkness. Her heart was clouded by a troubling foreboding. A week went by. Noah's vitality had returned and his condition had stabilized. However, Martha's heart was still filled with dread. Olivia and Thomas's relationship remained precarious. Thomas had alluded to impending deadlines for a significant project as the reason for his recent tardy homecomings, dispelling his wife's worries. As Martha watered the roses in her yard, Olivia appeared to believe what he had said, but there were still hints of uncertainty in her eyes. Abruptly, the mobile phone in her pocket started ringing. She glanced at Bright Star Daycare on the screen. She gave a rather surprised response. Hi there. Martha Brown is this person. Brown? Mrs. Carroll's tone was rushed, obviously in distress. During nap time, Noah experienced an unexpected seizure. Please arrive as soon as possible. Martha's face drained of blood. A convulsion. I'll be there immediately. How about an ambulance? We've made one call already. It arrived just now. Did you get in touch with Olivia? Not quite yet. I felt you ought to be the first to know. I'll go over straight immediately. I get it as soon as she ended the call. Martha hurried into the house after dropping her gardening equipment. She snatched up her money and vehicle keys and ran out the front door. She had lost her train of thought. The only thing propelling her body forward while driving was the notion that she had to be at Noah's side quickly. She gave Olivia a call. Luckily, she responded immediately. Mom, what's the matter? Olivia's voice could be heard over the telephone. Olivia. Noah had an abrupt seizure, the daycare reported over the phone. There's an ambulance. I'm now en route. On the other end of the telephone, Martha's voice was trembling despite her best efforts to stay composed. Olivia's breath caught and Martha heard it. What? Right now I'm leaving. Please, Mom. If Noah suffers any harm. Tears filled her voice. Everything will work out. I'll accompany him. You also hurry. While driving to the childcare, Martha had to fight the want to run red lights. In less than 5 minutes, she was there. A trip that typically took 15 years. A number of childcare providers were gathered outside the daycare looking concerned while an ambulance was parked in front of the facility. With shaky legs, Martha sprang from the car and hurried into the premises. At that moment, Noah was being carried down the corridor by paramedics on a stretcher. With an oxygen mask on, Noah's face was pallid and his little body was still. Noah. With a sigh, Martha called out and raced to her grandchild. It's all right. Grandma is present. A paramedic turned toward her. Are you his grandmother? We are transporting your grandson to the hospital for a thorough checkup, but he is stable. If you want to, feel free to ride along. Martha nodded and put her shaking hand in Noah's icy one. Carol came over to the sobbing at that point. I'm really sorry, Ms. Brown. Her voice broke abruptly with sobs during nap time. She then gave Martha a USB disc as her hands were trembling. This video was captured by our security camera. Please watch it, she added quietly. She had worry and anxiety in her eyes. Bewildered, Martha accepted the USB and put it in her pocket for the moment. The life of her grandchild came first. Taking Noah's hand, she went inside the ambulance and started praying in a low voice. "No worries, Noah. Grandma is with you here." Her voice was shaking as she whispered. With its siren blasting, the ambulance made its way to the city hospital. When Noah arrived, he was brought right away to the pediatric emergency room where medical professionals started treating him right away. Martha shivered as she sat in the waiting area. Additionally, she had called Thomas, who informed her that he was en route to the hospital around 20 minutes later. Breathless, Olivia hurried to the hospital. She had obviously left work quickly because she was still wearing her nurse's outfit. "Mom, how is Noah doing?" Her voice wavered in terror. "He is being examined by the physicians." Just as the seizure seemed to have ceased, a white-coated doctor entered the waiting area. "Are you members of the Brown family?" Martha and Olivia got up and rushed to the doctor. "His mother is me." "Is my son doing well?" Olivia frantically inquired. "The condition of your child is stable," the doctor said calmly. "He is starting to regain awareness as the seizure has stopped. It was an allergic response according to our testing. He could have consumed something that he doesn't often eat. We specifically suspect a severe allergy such as peanuts." Olivia and Martha exchanged glances. "But Noah, do you have any allergies?" Olivia murmured, her expression bewildered. When children are exposed to a significant allergen for the first time, their allergies can sometimes manifest abruptly. The doctor clarified that we will know more when we receive the results of Noah's blood test. We are currently administering antihistamines and 4 fluids to him. He should be able to return home in a few hours, I believe. The doctor's comments caused the two women to exhale with relief. But Martha had another question growing in her thoughts. The USB disk in her pocket came back to her. "Is he visible to us?" Olivia inquired. "Naturally. Please don't talk to him. He's still a little sleepy." The physician smiled as he spoke. 10 minutes later, Thomas reached the hospital. Sweating, he hurried in and gave Olivia a hug. "No. Is he okay?" "He is steady." In the arms of her husband, Olivia responded. It appears that an allergic response occurred. Martha was observing her son-in-law, whom she had considered to be a son. She experienced an odd feeling in her chest. Considering the USB stick Carol had handed her, his worry seemed sincere. She had the unshakable impression that there was a huge mystery concealed here. While Noah's hospital room was occupied by Olivia and Thomas, Martha stayed in the foyer of the hospital. After removing her laptop from her backpack, she put the USB drive in. Video from the childcare security camera was displayed on the screen. It appeared to be from this morning based on the date. The pre-lunch snack period was filmed on camera. A teacher was passing out fruit and little biscuits to the children seated around little tables. Noah caught Martha's eye. He was grinning brightly as usual as he spoke to Lily, who was sitting next to him. Then it took place. Lily was seen in the video handing Noah something she had taken out of her suitcase. "It's a secret, but it's a wonderful cookie." You could hear Lily's voice plainly. Accepting it, Noah put it in his mouth with an inquisitive look. After silently staring at the TV, Martha became aware of an adult figure standing in the corner of the video. Rachel Rutherford was the one. She appeared to be an observer in the classroom. The sight of Rachel nodding slightly and turning to face Lily was what made Martha's blood freeze. She had given Lily instructions and was observing as Lily gave it to Noah. Martha gave a start. Not simply kids were exchanging food here. There had been a plan. She pulled out her cell phone and dialed the cops with shaking hands. About 20 minutes after Martha's call, the cops showed up at the hospital. Outside of Noah's hospital room, young man investigator Michael Jensen and veteran female detective Linda Carter started a discreet conversation with Martha. "Can you show us the video?" Detective Linda's tone was stern, yet calm as she questioned. Playing the video on the USB drive, Martha unlocked her laptop. The detectives looked at each other and watched silently, especially at the time where Rachel was watching in the background and Lily was giving Noah something. "This definitely needs to be investigated," Linda stated gravely. "Have you received the results of your grandson's tests yet?" The doctor stated it was an allergic response, but not yet. Martha replied. At that moment, Mrs. Brown was approached by a white-coated doctor. "The test results are in our possession. Noah has severe peanut allergy symptoms. His system was found to have peanut protein." Martha gave a start. "We haven't fed him peanuts, though." Thomas and Olivia would not have been aware of his sensitivities. When someone is exposed to a significant allergen for the first time, they may develop allergies, the physician clarified. However, based on the video and the doctor's statement, it is possible that it was given to him on purpose. The cops started looking into it right away. While Detective Linda went to Rachel Rutherford's house to get in touch with her, Detective Michael went to Bright Star Childcare to collect further evidence. Olivia and Thomas were deeply horrified when they learned about the scenario. The possibility that her son was purposefully put in jeopardy made Olivia in particular go pale. However, why? What might possibly motivate Mrs. Rutherford to harm Noah? Olivia's voice was shaking as she asked. I'm not sure, Martha said, giving her daughter a firm embrace. However, the truth will be revealed by the police. One possibility, though, had already surfaced in her heart. Thomas was having an affair with this lady. Is Rachel the culprit? Detective Linda returned to the hospital a few hours later. Her face looked severe, as if she had discovered something important. After being shown the video footage, Rachel Rutherford acknowledged that she had told her daughter Lily to give Noah peanut-containing cookies despite her earlier denials. In a low voice, she described how awful Martha's voice was. However, why Linda the detective sighed deeply. It was me, she admits. All I said to Lily was that they would become friends if I gave Noah a special cookie. My daughter has no knowledge. Martha and Olivia exchanged shaky glances. Detective Linda wasn't done, though, because we looked into her cell phone and discovered offensive messages she had sent to Thomas Bradshaw. There was a thick quiet in the room. Olivia's eyes filled with tears. Thomas put his hands over his face and looked down at the ground. Is it true? Olivia spoke in a shaky, weak voice. Thomas simply nodded slightly, unable to raise his head. At the police station, he will now be subjected to formal questioning. Detective Linda went on to explain every facet of this case. Thomas was interrogated at the police station that evening. He acknowledged that he and Rachel had been having an affair for a number of months. He sobbed while covering his face in the interrogation room. I made an effort to break things off. I told her I wanted to value my family, but she thought otherwise. With a quivering voice, Thomas replied, I never thought she would hurt my son. In a separate room, Rachel said that he had promised to accompany her throughout her interview. My goal was to ruin Olivia's family. She testified, however, that she had grown bitter after Thomas recently attempted to break up with her and singled out Noah in retaliation. However, Detective Linda replied sharply, Did you know the risks of harming a child? With tears in her eyes, Rachel responded, Do you realize how much he wounded me? He said things like, I want to cherish my family, but I was being serious. Anger and sadness were blended together in her voice. However, I didn't believe Noah would be in any serious danger. I assumed Olivia would be upset and he would simply feel a bit queasy. Lily was also gently questioned by the police. Weeping, Lily replied naively. Give him a special biscuit, Mommy urged. I wanted to be friends with Noah since I like him. The doctor cautioned that tests showed Noah had a severe peanut allergy, but that dire effects might be avoided with early treatment. He could respond more severely this time if a similar exposure occurs in the future. Rachel was taken into custody on suspicion of child abuse and malicious harm. Additionally, the child care facility was looked at for supervisory carelessness, namely for neglecting to keep an eye on questionable conduct on Parent Observation Day. Martha and Olivia were extremely saddened by the treachery at a place they had trusted, but they were also thankful that Noah had not suffered any significant injuries. In particular, Olivia was unable to comprehend her husband's treachery and sobbed in the hospital lobby. That night, I don't want to see Thomas's face. After being given permission to be released, Noah was brought to Martha's home. At Olivia's request, the police freed Thomas, but he went back to his parents' house. Olivia stated icily as they separated, I trusted you, but because of you, my son was in danger. Right now, I am unable to think of anything. I require some space. Thomas only nodded as he was unable to respond. As Martha welcomed her daughter and grandson into her house, his face was filled with remorse and self-loathing. She considered the eventual harm to this family. Although trust is difficult to rebuild, she believed that for the time being, she should concentrate on the here and now, making sure her cherished grandchild was safe and mending her daughter's broken heart. In late November, a month after the event, Martha's window offered a glimpse of the garden's dropping leaves. As she drank her morning coffee, she silently looked out at the landscape. Since the tragedy, Olivia and Noah had been residing at her home. The sound of Noah racing down the stairs shattered the stillness of the morning. "Will I see Daddy today, Grandma?" Grinning, Martha brushed her fingers through her grandson's hair. "Yes, at noon Daddy will arrive." Despite the wall separating him and Olivia, Thomas had been going to see Noah twice a week. He was making every effort to carry out his paternal duties. In order to confront his faults, he had also started therapy. "Is your father a nasty person?" One day Noah inquired, and Olivia was dumbfounded. Martha recalls softly responding, "Daddy loves you even though he made a mistake." As she was getting breakfast ready, Olivia came into the kitchen. Although she had been on leave, she intended to start working again the next week. "Mom." As she poured coffee, Olivia remarked, "I received a call from the court yesterday." Rachel's sentencing appears to have been determined. After being found guilty in court, Rachel Rutherford received a sentence that included community service probation and required psychological therapy. "I was dominated by my emotions and hurt an innocent child," she had said in court, her voice shaking. "I'm not worthy of pardon." Lily had moved to a new daycare and moved in with her father. Additionally, Noah had begun going to a new daycare and was progressively getting back to his regular routine. Martha met Lily and her father at the grocery store that afternoon. When Lily first spotted Martha, she timidly hid behind her father, but she eventually found the bravery to approach. "Is Noah doing well?" Innocently, she inquired. She was unaware that she had harmed her pal. The fact that she could no longer play with Noah made her unhappy. Lily's father apologized and bent deeply. "My daughter had no knowledge. I'm so sorry." "I understand," Martha said politely. There was nothing wrong with Lily. Thomas and Noah were playing in the living room when she got home. Pretending to read a magazine, Olivia maintained a certain distance, but Martha saw her sometimes observing the two. Thomas had begged Olivia's forgiveness on several occasions and sincerely regretted his adultery and betrayal of his family. He had stated, "I want to get my family back." Olivia hadn't shut the door entirely, but she still couldn't let him inside her heart. Martha had self-reproach for failing to see the situation sooner and remorse for not being able to safeguard her grandchild. Noah asked Grandma one day if it was acceptable to pardon Lily's mother. Noah went on, "My buddy is Lily. She's a good child." Martha was prompted to consider what genuine family meant by that simple query. A letter showed up in the mailbox one Saturday morning. Rachel wrote a letter to Martha. "I want to apologize from the bottom of my heart, even if I will never be forgiven." As Martha read the letter, it said, she understood that forgiving was both necessary and difficult. Martha took Noah to the park the next Sunday. They watched ducks congregate to eat the bread while sitting on a seat by the lake in the nice fall weather. They made an offer. Lily and her father sat on the adjacent bench. Though they played far apart, the two kids sometimes grinned at each other. Martha smiled as she pondered. A family is not formed just by blood relations. A genuine family is made up of ties that support and shield one another. She also reminded herself that forgetting and forgiving are two distinct things. Perhaps admitting faults, accepting responsibility, and continuing to work toward improvement constitute genuine atonement. Martha was starting to come to terms with a new kind of family as she watched Noah grin. Over time, the broken ties may be restored. Though she could see optimism, the trip would not be simple. Story 4. My phone rang when I was having a nice coffee break at the little cafe opposite from my office building. I nearly choked on my cappuccino as Mom's name appeared on the screen. It wasn't odd that we hadn't spoken for months. We had never been intimate. Kelly. "Hi, sweetheart." Her tone sounded abnormally soft. I anxiously stirred my coffee and murmured, "Hello, Mom. This is not what was intended. I just wanted to see how things are going for you since the divorce." It must have been challenging. I let out a sigh as the well-known pain in my chest returned. I had just been divorced from Mark for 2 weeks after discovering him having an affair with his coworker. The recollection still hurt. Yes, I acknowledge that it has been difficult. However, I'm getting by. I got to keep the house at least. I didn't argue with Mark about it. His guilt, I believe, favored me. Before I could say anything further, Mom said, "Listen, you are sorely missed by your father and myself. This Saturday, how about we have supper together? We haven't had a family lunch in far too long." The invitation was unexpected. I had been married to Mark for 5 years. We were invited over by my folks, perhaps twice. Conversations should always be brief and superficial. I agreed. I'm becoming overcome with curiosity. I hung up and sat there perplexed. Warm and friendly had never been my parents' style. My older sister Lisa had always received consecutive A's as a youngster, making her the golden child. The person who got married immediately following college. The one who produced grandkids for them. I was simply the afterthought Kelly. Saturday came around fast. I saw that my parents' little ranch-style house required new paint when I parked into their driveway. I was about to knock when Dad answered the door. He pulled me into an uncomfortable hug and shouted, "Kelly, come in," with strange eagerness. Mom came out of the kitchen using her apron to wipe her hands. "You're exactly on schedule. We're almost done with dinner." The fine china which they always save for Christmas and Thanksgiving was on the table. As we ate, there was undoubtedly a problem. They asked me a ton of questions. "How is the marketing firm's job going then?" Dad inquired. "All right. Next month I'm hoping to get promoted." As I chopped into my chicken, I remarked, "What do you currently do with your leisure time?" Mom added. "Do you have any new interests?" I gave a shrug. "Not at all. Simply concentrated on surviving each day. I suffered greatly as a result of the divorce." Mom patted my hand empathetically and murmured, "Of course, dear. You're young, though. You'll recover." After exchanging looks, Dad cleared his throat. "What plans do you have for the house, then?" It was there. The true motive behind the invitation to supper. "It's going to be my home." Flatly, I replied. "Next year, I intend to refurbish, after I have some money saved up." Mom's eyes glowed. "Remodeling. How appropriate. You ought to bring that up." I put my fork down. "What are you saying?" Dad started to lean forward. "I have made the decision to fully remodel our home with your mother. The electrical wiring is no longer up to code and the plumbing has to be updated." I warily answered, "That's good. You should do some work on your residence. The problem is that we need a place to stay while the renovations are being done," Mom added. Months may pass. When I recognized where this was going, my gut grew tight. Dad also mentioned that renting would be a huge waste of money because Lisa's apartment is already packed with the kids. Mom gripped my hand as she reached across the table. "We hoped you would allow us to remain at your home. It's enormous, and you have plenty of room to yourself." I wanted to refuse right away. My skin crawled at the idea of my parents encroaching on my personal space. We have never had a good relationship, and I had learned to appreciate my freedom after years of feeling inferior to Lisa. But I paused when I saw their eager expressions. "Perhaps this is an opportunity to finally improve your connection with them." My home was also roomy. A spacious colonial with 4 bedrooms. I answered hesitantly, "I suppose that would be okay. You would have to move in when Mom gladly recommended next week. On Monday, the contractors will begin work." Dad responded, "We'd be so appreciative, Kelly. It would be really beneficial to us." I nodded against my better judgment. "Okay. Until your renovations are finished, you are welcome to remain with me." I questioned whether I had misunderstood their intentions because the relief and delight on their expressions appeared sincere. Perhaps they truly wanted to get back in touch and our living situation would allow us to do so. "I'm grateful, honey." Mom murmured, a little tear in her eye. "For us, this is really important." My parents brought a number of luggage to my house a week later. Mom grabbed a bag full of her favorite cookware, and Dad carried a box of personal belongings. "Greetings." Holding the door open, I said, "I got the upstairs guest room ready for you two. Kelly, you are really nice." As she went by, Mom kissed my cheek. As I assisted them in settling in, we agreed not to cause any trouble. My instinct told me that I would regret this choice, but I forced those feelings to the back of my mind. How awful might it be? It was brief. Ultimately, living with my parents for the first several weeks went remarkably well. We only interacted on the weekends and in the evenings because I went for work every morning at 8 and didn't get back until after 6. When I went home, I was shocked to see that my mother had prepared dinner, something I hadn't done since I was a kid. "How did your day at work go?" As I took off my shoes and put up my coat, she would inquire. "Busy but effective." Taking a seat at the kitchen table, I would respond. Dad always waved casually as I walked by while he watched the news in the living room. They would leave early on the weekends to see how the renovations were going at their house, which allowed me to relax and keep up some semblance of my regular schedule. The bathroom has been completely gutted according to the contractor. When they got back one Sunday night, Dad reported, water damage was discovered and has to be fixed. It seems like it will take longer than anticipated. I made a remark while attempting to hide my worry. Mom gave a nod. They always do. However, we are quite appreciative of having a more pleasant place to reside. I gave a stiff smile. I'm glad to assist. However, the harmonious cohabitation was short-lived. When I was cleaning the kitchen on a Saturday morning, I switched on some Beethoven, which was the first indication that anything was off. Mom's face was pinched when she appeared in the doorway. Would you mind declining that, Kelly? Or even better, off? A horrible migraine is starting to strike. I reached for the speaker and responded, oh, sure. I simply listen to classical music as I clean. You can do anything you want when you live alone. She answered, however, you must show consideration when you have visitors. To avoid bringing up the fact that they weren't really guests, I bit my tongue. When they requested to remain at my house, I kindly granted their request. Rather, I quietly completed the cleaning. The next problem started on a Tuesday night when my friend Jan came in with a bottle of wine and takeout. As we sat down with our dinner on the couch, I remarked, this is so nice. I've been craving a night out with the gals. Dad cleared his throat from the doorway as we were halfway through our second glass of wine. It is almost 9 o'clock, Kelly. Pointily, he said. Before going to bed, your mother and I are attempting to unwind. Jen lifted her eyebrows in my direction. I smiled apologetically at her. I'm sorry, Father. We'll keep it low. Mom came up to me in the kitchen after Jen had left. We don't mean to be tough, honey, but it's annoying to have guests after 6 o'clock. We need our quiet time because we're becoming elderly. I said, I understand, but I didn't. I'll let my buddies know that they shouldn't visit for a time. The limitations kept piling up. The groceries I purchased caused them to grumble. Why spend money on organic? Both of them experienced back discomfort due to the firmness of their mattress, and I even had trouble loading the dishwasher. You don't arrange the plates that way. I felt increasingly alienated in my own house every day. If my residence wasn't up to their standards, I wanted to yell that they should live somewhere else. However, I said nothing. This was a short-term agreement. All I had to do was bear it a bit longer. Maya, my 7-year-old niece, yelled at me when she saw me, and 2 kids were running through my living room when I got home one day. Jake, her 5-year-old brother, kept going around the coffee table in circles. I glanced around, perplexed. Where is your mother? With Grandma in the kitchen. Maya answered, then hurried away once again. Totally unconcerned by the mayhem coming from the other room, I discovered Lisa and my mother conversing over coffee. Hey, sis, remarked Lisa nonchalantly. I hope it's okay with you that we stopped by. Obviously not. I said a falsehood. I just didn't anticipate company. Mom dismissed it with a wave of her hand. You wouldn't mind, I assured Lisa. There is plenty of room for the youngsters to play in your house. In contrast to their little abode, what began as a one-time visit soon turned into a regular one. My parents soon began to pick up Jake and Maya from school and bring them to my house so Lisa could pick them up after work, which was sometimes as late as 9 or 10 o'clock at night. My living room would be turned into a playground when I got home fatigued and in need of some solitude. There are toys all over the place, both my parents' lack of attempt to regulate their grandchildren's conduct and the sticky fingerprints on my furnishings. They are simply being children. When I suggested that they may tone it down, Mom would say, youngsters must express themselves. Weekends became terrible. Lisa would spend whole days at my place with her husband Tom and the children. Feeling like an unwanted visitor in my own home, I would withdraw to my bedroom while the grown-ups conversed and the kids played amok. I went over to my folks in the living room one evening after Lisa had finally taken her kids home. You like visiting the kids, I know that. I started off cautiously, but I require some relaxation after work. Perhaps they could come less frequently. Dad frowned as he looked up from his newspaper. Kelly, they're family. Family should always be accepted. I explained that I wasn't suggesting they weren't welcome. All I'm requesting is some boundaries. Mom and Dad looked at each other. Nothing changed, but we will see what we can do. If anything, I started to dread the daily commute home as the number of visits rose. I comforted myself by thinking that things will return to normal when my parents' refurbishment was finished. The Saturday that altered everything then arrived. Mom made the announcement that she would be having a family supper at my house. We all gathered around my dining table when Lisa, Tom, and the children arrived at 5 o'clock. I observed Lisa and my parents making meaningful eye contact throughout the meal. There was a sense of tension in the air, as if everyone knew something I didn't. Dad cleared his throat as we finished dessert. We need to talk to you more seriously, Kelly. With a knot in my gut, I put down my fork. Lisa and her family are the focus. Mom started. They are now having some financial issues. Their apartment's rent keeps going up. They can no longer sustain it. I fervently hoped I was mistaken, but I could see where this was going. Mom patted my hand and said, "We were thinking. Maybe perhaps Lisa and her family might live in temporarily while they recover because you have so much room." I glanced at my sister and dad, my jaw hanging wide. I glanced at Lisa, who was giving me what I thought was a look of helplessness and desperation. She used that identical gaze to obtain what she wanted throughout our entire upbringing. "No," I responded bluntly, "not at all." There was silence at the table. As though my rejection had come as a complete surprise, 4 sets of eyes gazed at me in shock. It was Lisa who broke the stillness first. "No, what do you mean?" She raised her voice abruptly. "Kelly, you live here alone. For one person, this house is just too large. It's my home." My fury increasing, I answered. "Who lives there is up to me." "We are family, though." Mom murmured, her shocked eyes wide. "We help one another. I have stood by you," I retorted. "For weeks, I've allowed you and your father to remain here for free. I've given permission for Maya and Jake to attend daycare at my residence. I tolerated my life being totally upended." Mom's face twisted into a look of wounded pride as her hand sprang to her chest. "I never imagined my own kid would act so disrespectfully toward our living arrangement. That's not my purpose." I spoke, attempting to maintain a steady tone. "All I'm doing is setting a limit." "Limits?" Lisa laughed. "That's just self-serving rhetoric. You live here by yourself and have all the room. We have 2 growing children and are crowded into a 2-bedroom apartment. Perhaps you need to have considered that before having children that you couldn't afford." Lisa gasped as I snapped, "You dare not! Everyone can have a large empty house and be a divorced parent without children." I clenched my teeth and muttered, "I earned this house. I put a lot of effort into my job. I made wise decisions. Above all, it belongs to me. Who lives there is up to me." "That's it then," Dad inquired. "You refuse to assist your own sister when she is in need." Each of their faces caught my attention. The entitlement, the judgment, the disillusionment. I've been attempting to get their acceptance and be seen as valued as Lisa for years. However, I now understood that I didn't require their consent. I needed to feel at ease. "That's all. I have verified that Lisa and her family will not be relocating. This is the end of the conversation." After getting up, I went to my bedroom and shut the door firmly behind me. The muted noises of their ongoing talk were audible to me, undoubtedly analyzing my brutality and selfishness. I didn't give a damn. I felt like I had defended myself for the first time in weeks. I walked to a quiet residence early the following morning. Neither of my parents recognized me when I walked to the kitchen. Mom, who had been preparing my breakfast ever since they moved in, was drinking coffee and reading a magazine with a critical eye. Dad had his crossword problem occupied. "Good morning." I tried to be quiet. All right. If they desired to behave like kids, they made that decision. After preparing my own breakfast, I left for work. When I came back that night, there was no meal. Awaiting. For days, the pattern persisted. Like ghosts, my parents wandered around the house talking to each other, but never to me. The one bright spot in the whole thing was that Lisa stopped bringing the kids around. I was really beginning to appreciate the quiet after a week of this silent treatment. They had made a grave calculation error if this was their intended penalty. After Mark moved out, I lived alone for weeks and had learned to like the privacy. As usual, I departed for work on Friday morning. I arrived to the office later than expected because of a hectic day filled with back-to-back meetings. Around 7:30 p.m., I finally pulled into my driveway and was excited for a peaceful evening with a glass of wine and perhaps a movie. When I tried to turn the front door lock using my key, it refused to turn. I tried again, thinking I had misplaced my keys. Nothing. "What on earth?" I murmured, making a third attempt before I realized. They had replaced the locks. I loudly knocked after ringing the doorbell. A minute later, I caught a glimpse of my mother's face through the side window. The security chain pulled taut as she barely opened the door. As though I were a complete stranger, she responded, "Yes. What's happening on Mom?" "My key is broken." Oh, she remarked nonchalantly. Today we got our locks replaced. My mouth fell open. Without notifying me, you changed the locks on my house. Behind her dad showed up. We have been considering. Kelly, you don't need this much room. Lisa's family is also having difficulties. Living here makes more sense for them. Are you crazy? I spluttered. You cannot simply occupy my home. We will not take over. Mom was right. Simply said we're using the area more effectively. Next month, Lisa and her family will move in. I was astounded by their boldness as I stood there. Now let me in. This is against the law. Dad brushed it off as a family issue. You can locate another place to live because you have a lot of money. You honestly believe I won't make a police call, I swore. Mom gave me a patronizing grin. You wouldn't report your own parents to the police. They genuinely thought I would simply roll over and allow them to take my house. The property I had been making mortgage payments on for years, the house I had battled for during the divorce. I'll be staying at a hotel for the night. Even though I was furious, I spoke in an uncanny calm tone. When I've had time to reflect, we can talk about this tomorrow. Mom's face lit up with relief. Kelly, you made a really mature choice. I knew you would change your mind. I heard the door of my car close as I made my way back there. They believed they had triumphed. They believed I was surrendering. They were completely mistaken. I drove to the closest hotel, checked in, and contacted my divorce attorney, James Brennan, right away. While I waited for his reply, I left an urgent message on his voicemail outlining the circumstances. I alternated between incredulity and rage as I paced the hotel room. How could I have been harmed by my own parents? Were they truly under the impression that they could get away with it? I was about to contact the cops straight when my phone rang. It's James Kelly. I received your message. Are you all right? Not at all. I acknowledged that my parents had unlawfully occupied my home. They won't allow me in after changing the locks while I was at work. That is completely against the law. No matter how long they have been living with you, James affirmed that they have no right to do that. It's quite acceptable for you to contact the police. Feeling justified, I responded, that's what I thought. However, I was concerned that I was exaggerating. He told me you weren't. Depending on your state's laws, this is both criminal trespass and probably burglary. Make a police call. Make a report. I'm also available if you require legal representation later on. With a weird mixture of resolve and melancholy, I thanked him and hung up. Although I never thought I would have to call the police to mediate a conflict with my own family, they had gone too far. I saw that it was 9 p.m. when I looked at the clock. It was late enough that my parents would probably be getting comfortable for the evening and maybe even congratulating themselves on their ingenious scheme. It's the ideal time for a wake-up call. I went directly to the police station by car. When I got to the front desk, the night shift officer glanced up. I have to report an unlawful property seizure, I said. My house's locks have been changed and my parents won't let me in. With a nod, the officer motioned me to take a seat. I'll require identity and evidence of ownership. I unlocked my phone to view the digital versions of my mortgage and deed paperwork and took out my driver's license. I described everything, including how I had let my parents remain while they were renovating and how they had changed the locks while I was at work and denied me access. I gave the cops my phone number so they could contact me when I gave my formal statement. The Hampton Inn on 5th Street is where I'll be staying. I informed them that while I returned to the hotel and made an effort to unwind, I was unable to fall asleep. I was reliving the day's events. The hotel phone rang at midnight. This is Officer Daniels from the police department, Miss Richards. I'm phoning to inquire about the state of your home. I instantly sat up. Indeed? What took place? Your parents had to be detained, ma'am. When we informed them that they were occupying your property unlawfully, they fought our officers and used derogatory language. They're in the police station right now. In spite of everything, I felt sick. Are they incarcerated in holding cells? Indeed. When is the best time for you to visit the station? I looked at the time. It was beyond midnight already. I can arrive first thing in the morning. My cell phone started ringing as soon as I hung up with my sister and dad making repeated calls. I just switched off my phone and didn't answer any of the calls. I wanted room to think without being influenced by others. When I put my phone back on the next morning, I was inundated with alerts, including hundreds of missed calls and texts from Lisa and my parents. I looked at some of the messages. How could you harm your own parents in this way? You were reared by us. Because of you, Mom is wailing in a jail. You're ruthless and harsh. Now retract your comment. Family supports family. You're not my sister anymore. I hung up the phone, refusing to be influenced by their guilt-tripping techniques. My parents had spent all night at the police station and were still there when I got there. They seemed awful, unkempt and worn out. Mom's eyes were swollen and red from crying, and when she saw me, she began to cry again. For a minute, Dad just had a disappointed and angry expression. I felt pity threatening to overwhelm me. After all, these were my parents. Then I recalled how blatantly they had intended to rob my home. Hell is entitled. Just because they desired it, they didn't steal what was rightfully mine. I repressed my sympathy and remained steadfast. I'm prepared to take back my statement, but only with one restriction. I looked straight at my parents when I informed the policeman. They must leave my residence right away after gathering their belongings. Today. Yeah, all right, Dad responded hastily, his fury giving way to desperation. Kelly, you can do whatever you want. Mom frantically nodded while crying. We're going now. Please just remove the charges. They were freed after the police fined them for defying and disrespecting authorities. They gladly complied with my instruction that they vacate right away, at the parking lot of the station. When Lisa saw her parents come out, she was waiting and pacing nervously next to her car. She hurried over to assist them. With a look of utter malice in her eyes, she placed them in her car and glared at me. They then took off in the direction of my residence. To make sure they went there, I drove after them. My folks started packing as soon as they got to my place. In the garage, they worked swiftly and quietly as they loaded everything into their car. They were prepared to go within an hour. They didn't say goodbye to me before they drove off. When they pulled out of the driveway, they didn't even look at me. I got all the locks replaced as soon as they left by calling a locksmith. I made the clear decision that I would never again allow anyone other than my family to enter my house. My mother sent me a text message a few days later. You are no longer a part of this family in my eyes. We no longer wish to contact with you. I exhaled a sigh of relief as I gazed at the message. It was not a sense of regret or grief. It was liberty. I also did not want to speak to them. Their incessant insistence, their partiality for Lisa, and their feeling of right to my house and my life. At last, I was free of everything. I now live alone and peacefully at my home. My life is my own, free from their demands and criticism. I don't talk to my sister or my parents, and to be honest, it has made my life so much more tranquil. I occasionally question whether I should feel bad about how things turned out, but then I remind myself that I didn't cause this circumstance. I just refuse to allow myself to be exploited and controlled. I feel totally at peace for the first time in years